Good evening and welcome to our April 28th, 2015 Ogden City Council meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. We will turn the time to Vice Chair White for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now please join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. We do have some special people we'd like to recognize today. We have Waldo the Wildcat over there. Woo-hoo. We want to take this opportunity to recognize Weber State University's mascot, Waldo the Wildcat, and the Spirit Squad for their national recognitions. Waldo was a national mascot champion. He captured first place in the NCA, the National Cheerleaders Association, Collegiate National Mascot Championships earlier this month in Daytona Beach, Florida. In Waldo's first ever mascot competition, he dazzled spectators and judges with his performance themed A Day in the Life of a College Mascot.
Yeah.
We're not done yet,
Yeah,
Waldo.
we're not quite there yet.
We're not done.
Ready? He's going to dazzle. Yes!
Right on that later. Only the top 10 mascots from across the country were selected to compete, and Waldo took the championship by nearly 2 points. The 6-foot-tall Wildcat performed backflips and breakdancing during his routine, and even constructed his own props, skills that are rarely demonstrated by mascots. Now, not only do we know that Waldo is the best mascot around, but the rest of the country does too. Waldo wasn't the only one to shine at the NCA Collegiate Cheer and Dance Championships. The Weber State Cheer team finished in 3rd place in the Division I large co-ed competition. And the Weber State Dancers took 6th place in the Division I Open Dance Competition. The Spirit Squad, led by Coach Summer Willis, has grabbed 3 national titles since 2009 and placed in the top 3 at every competition they have competed. Weber State cheerleaders, dancers, and Waldo led busy lives as they balanced their student responsibilities with their cheerleading. They bring a sense of pride and spirit to all events they attend and thrive in their role as ambassadors for Weber State Athletics and as role models in our community. Please join with me in recognizing Waldo and the Weber State University Spirit Squad. Waldo, now would be a good time to come up and do that backflip. But bring the cheer squad with you. Bring the rest of them with you. We're going to take some pictures.
You'll need to give them 5 or something.
Okay, before they get here, do that backflip thing. Okay.
Whoa.
Okay, crowd around. We'll take some pictures.
Weber State, Weber State.
Great.
Weber State, Weber State, great, great, great. Weber State, Weber State, great, great, great. Weber State, Weber State, great, great, great.
Okay, coming close. Everyone want to come a little bit closer. Okay, 1, 2, 3. A couple more. We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Waldo, would you like to say a few words? Thank you. Oh, he hearts us. All right. Would you like to speak for him?
What?
Would you like to speak for him?
Oh. Sure.
Yeah, turn around, speak into the microphone there.
Okay. No, on behalf of the Spirit Squad, we just want to thank you. This was a big moment for Waldo, this first ever national championship for our program, so we're really proud of him, but also the entire Spirit Squad. This is only a portion of them that have came out tonight to represent the team, but on behalf of the entire team, we have about 40 student athletes, and they do so much in the community. Their community service hours are amongst the highest among the athletic department. They do so much. We are so happy to be a part of Ogden and represent them out in on the national level. So thank you so much for the award. We really appreciate the recognition.
Thank you. Probably important to mention that you're all in finals time of year, and it's wonderful that you actually took the time to come. Thank you for being
A
here.
lot of them are, but you guys were able to make it, so appreciate them coming out and representing their teammates.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a request to be on the agenda from the Children's Service Society. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm afraid we're not as exciting as this group.
Yes, we are.
I represent Children's Service Society, and particularly Grand Families Program. I'm the program director. My name is Patricia Totterer. This is Sheila Richens, and she is the coordinator in the Ogden area. We are very excited to bring to Ogden an evidence-based social program that helps grandparents and other relatives raising children due to the substance abuse, mental illness, sometimes incarceration, or just walking away of their biological parents. Our organization has been around since 1884, and it serves the needs of children. We are new to the Ogden area. What it means to be an evidence-based program is that research has been done and has proven that we do indeed achieve positive results and impact in the lives of the caregivers and the children. And we're very excited to have that denomination. The program aims to provide support and education. It's mostly to grandparents, but sometimes we do have aunts and uncles that are taking care of these kids, to help them with behavior management, to help them with assistance in obtaining either custody or guardianship in the courts, linking to resources. The program is free. It consists of 10 group sessions plus extra supports throughout the year. And we serve dinner, and we have a children's group and a caregivers group. And I want Sheila to have an opportunity to explain a little bit more about what's going on, particularly here in Ogden.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight and serving on the council, and thank you for letting us come and talk to you. I'm real excited about being in Weber County again, because I've worked in Davis County for a number of years, and I'm glad to not have to travel so far. And I love this organization. If you'll look at the statistics sheet that I gave you, you'll see that on the top it says that 82,820 children in Utah are raised by grandparents or extended family members. These statistics were rendered in 2010. So you can imagine that from 2010 until now, the numbers have increased quite drastically, and we don't have those. But it would be safe to say, with the drug use and the drug culture in our communities now, there are more and more children that are needing to be raised by their grandparents. So I'll just give you a little example. I talked to a lady today that I'll be helping to do a guardianship with Thursday. And she has her 3-year-old niece in her home because her sister and her sister's partner are actively drugging, and they're homeless, and they don't have the ability and don't have the time to care for their daughter because that drug issue has become so prominent in their lives that that's the number one thing. So how do we keep that 3-year-old safe while these parents are going through this process? And will they get through the process and will they clean their lives up and get clean and be able to raise that child? We don't know. But between now and the time that we determine that, there has to be a safe place for that 3-year-old to be. If DCFS became involved, which they have been, and DCFS then told this lady to call us and have us to help them. But the cost of putting a child in foster care is $33,000 per year. And the Grand Families Program offers, through the Children's Service Society, provides kinship care with resources that cost about $3,000 a year. So when grandparents take the children, they don't have to go into foster care. They're able to be in a home where culturally they're connected. If you can imagine in foster care going into a home and being taken care of by foster parents, which is a great program. But when they look on the mantle, they don't see pictures of their grandmothers or grandfathers or their aunts or uncles. They see pictures of other people's grandparents or aunts and uncles. And so right there's a uniqueness and a difference. And so I will help this young lady to file for guardianship through the OCAP program so that she doesn't have to pay an attorney to do that. And I will give her all the paperwork, take the information from her, give her the paperwork. She will go to the court and apply for guardianship. We will help her to apply for a specified relative grant through DWS to help support the child a little bit through the state, and also to apply for Medicaid so that the child will have a way to. Right now, she has no medical insurance at all. So we're just here primarily to support kinship caregivers that are in this situation. And I know that some of you are grandfathers, and you've probably done a lot of things to get to where you are now, and you probably think, when I get off this council, me and my wife are going to hop in our RV and head down, go in the sunset. But what would you do if you got a call and found out that all of a sudden you might have to be raising 4 or 5 of your grandchildren, which was the first client that I had when we opened up. She's 35 years at the IRS and ready to retire, and she has 5 grandchildren under the age of 10 now that she needs to care for, or chooses to care for, because the mother and the father have chosen other things and are not able or willing to take care of the children. So we provide free classes, and in those classes we teach about the uniqueness of their circumstance and help them to develop ways that they can support those children and themselves. And so some of our group topics are grief and loss and attachment. We talk about attachment disorder. We talk about the dynamics of kinship and parenting 2 generations. And also we talk about parenting at-risk children. So we do the classes. From there we register our people into what's called the friend-to-friend, and then we support them as long as they need to. They can come to the friend-to-friend. They can receive support from us. If they just need somebody to talk to and they're just like having a horrendous day, I don't know about you, but I chase my granddaughter around, and after about 2 hours, I thank Heavenly Father that I don't have to take care of her the rest of the night or for the rest of her life or whatever, because I don't have the energy anymore. But these grandparents find a way to do it, and we try to support them. So we're new in the area. We've been out doing outreach and talking to people so that they can make referrals, and that's why we're here tonight, just so that you will know that we're here. We received funding from the legislature for 3 years to be in Weber and Cache County. So we're excited to be here. We're located up on Harrison Boulevard, and my card is connected with your packet, and Patricia's card is there. And then on the top, there's a little pass-along card, and that's kind of what we use. We give those out so people can pass those on to others that they think might need our services or benefit from our services. That's who we are. Do we have any questions?
As someone who finds foster families for children who don't have relatives to take care of them, I appreciate what you do.
Yes, and we work very closely with Utah Foster Care Foundation. They're actually in the same building as we are in. And so we are excited to be able to support to them and them to us. Thank you.
And Sheila, also with your group, is there somebody within your practice that can help those who have English as a second language?
Yes, we do have one worker in our office that speaks Spanish, and when we did our first series of groups, we're actually in our second set of groups now, and we had one lady that did not speak English, and so she did the group independently with her, but then the lady who did not speak English and got those independent, she elected to come into the group as well, even though she could understand very little, just to get the feel and the spirit of the people that were in that group and the support. So yes, we do have that.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
we hope that you'll pass our information on to people that you feel like might need our help, and we'll be happy to help them. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Our agenda is the approval of minutes. First, the study session on March 17th, 2015. Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you. I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
And then the work session of March 17th, 2015. Councilmember Garner.
Yes, Chair Heyer, I've reviewed those minutes and found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection, and I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Councilmember Blair to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next item is common consent agenda. We have 6 items on the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve all common consent items and specifically set a public hearing for May 12th for the 5-year consolidated plan. And hats off to Councilmember Blair, who's joining the sewer board.
With that, I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Blair to approve the common consent agenda and set the public hearing for May 12th on the 5-year consolidated plan. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Congratulations, Councilmember Blair.
Thank you.
Next item is reports from the Planning Commission concerning artificial turf ordinance. Mr. Montgomery, welcome.
Try to use some technology here tonight to dazzle you. So what you have before you tonight was an item the Planning Commission looked at where a petition was filed to amend the ordinance to allow the consideration of artificial turf as a landscaping element. So generally when you think of artificial turf, you think of it as an item that's used in high traffic areas or sports fields or areas that change over seasons. For example, the picture on your right, during the wintertime, that's a skate rink. And during the summertime, it's a green plaza with shade canopies on it for the people in this development to sit out on. And so it has its place, and it has had its place for many years under these conditions. What's happening, though, is we're seeing it take place, its use being looked at in other aspects that are becoming more local, residential, or commercial, and not large scale as it originally was developed for. Presently, our definition of landscaping talks about plants, living plant material, rocks, gravels, mulches, wood chips. But it doesn't include anything about any artificial turf. For that reason, the petition has been filed to amend this section of the ordinance to allow its consideration. One of the things the planning staff did when we looked at the petition and presented this to the Planning Commission was was looking at what research is out there regarding artificial turf, its use, and other cities have dealt with this issue. What have they looked at? This little chart here was kind of the pros and cons we presented to the Planning Commission regarding artificial turf or concerns with artificial turf. One of the items that's looked at is water conservation, reducing green waste, noise reduction because you don't have lawnmowers or trimmers, plus air pollution from those motorized instruments, improving the air quality, and reduction in the use of chemicals on the surfaces that may get into the water supply. So those items were kind of the benefits of why someone would consider artificial turf. Some of the concerns about it may be aesthetics. If you're looking at natural processes, especially in our climate, there are winter seasons where things go dormant, and artificial turf doesn't have a dormancy. It still stays green and doesn't change, where in some climates you may have green all year long, and so it's not a concern. You have the concern that it does become a heat sink. It does create more heat, and so that does have a effect to the climate, even though it's a microclimate issue, and it does have that type of concern. It also has a limit in terms of its lifespan. There's a point that it wears out and starts to degrade, and it needs to be taken out and replaced. And so you have those concerns. Some studies suggest that it does affect the soil underneath in terms of the natural processes that take place in soils with bacteria and those type of things. And some studies will also say that there are concerns if not done properly, you create drainage problems and take more water to the stormwater system than you would normally if you did not have artificial turf. And again, as I mentioned, the green appearance in the winter. One of the things the Planning Commission talked about too is it's not always just green. We've seen with places like Boise State or Eastern Washington, they also become other colors besides green. And so that becomes sometimes a concern that is at a natural setting. As staff, we looked at several different cities, and listed on this slide are some of the cities we looked at in terms of their regulations. And you see most of those are more warm climate areas, other than Aurora, Colorado, which is similar to our climate. We did look at, were there any general trends that we could pick up from these other cities who've adopted ordinances? And generally, they talked about limiting the use to some extent. In some communities, it could be in the backyard, but nothing in the front. In other areas, it can be in the front yard if it's combined with living plant material. There wasn't really one consistent approach that the community took to how they treat the use of artificial turf. So as we looked at that, as we went to the Planning Commission, proposed certain ordinance revisions that could be looked at to address the issue. Now, one of the things I've just done with this slide, and this is a home at 4722 Skyline. You can look at it. They've looked at the whole yard in terms of a water conservation measure. The front of the home has been done with living plant material and rocks, and has created an artistic expression of that yard. And the rocks really kind of, if you talk about spaces, create the space you'd normally find a lawn in. But this is their approach. The backyard, because that becomes a living area, did the backyard all in artificial turf in those green areas. That's all artificial turf there. And then they have planting beds around that turf. So normally you look at it, you wouldn't really know that there's any difference. They were very concerned about water conservation and took two approaches to address that issue. Either one and other items are really acceptable measures for water conservation. Even lawn itself can be done in such a way that it is a water conservation idea, using it as in high traffic areas only, making sure you do the proper maintenance in terms of aerating, fertilizing, and watching how you water it. Lawns can also become a way to do water conservation if you pay attention to it. So
It changed the type of turf you use too.
right, there doesn't have to be Kentucky blue. There are other types of grasses. So there are a lot of options out there. So when you say this is the only water-wise option that exists, it's not. But it is one of those types of approaches you can take to property. So in our staff proposal, we looked at saying there's a minimum quality that should take place for these materials. There's a broad spectrum of artificial turfs out there. And in the ordinance that we had proposed to the Planning Commission, we had said that we feel we've got to set those standards so at least it has a positive impression to the neighborhood. You could get really cheap, not do it right, and it looks worse than if you just let the lawn go brown. We also said there's places where we can see this in the future, playgrounds and sports fields. One of the reasons a lot of sports fields have gone to the artificial turf is the high use on those areas and the problem in maintaining those spaces. You know, I'll give an example of Juan Diego. I mean, their soccer field is probably the best in the state, and it's artificial turf. And people look at that as a good solution. We also felt that the product needs to have minimum warranty, and they need to install it properly. It needs to be permeable. We need to allow the water to get back into the ground and not all go to the storm drain, because there are products out there that are not permeable. We also, because of the heat that it can generate, need to make sure it doesn't affect the living plants next to it and have some distance setbacks for shrubs or for trees, and have a requirement that it be maintained and replaced just like any other little type of landscaping. So we proposed that to the Planning Commission when we looked at this back in September. The Planning Commission came back, however, and had some concerns. Now, this represents the property that filed the petition. That front is the artificial turf. And, you know, there were some attempts, I guess, to then create different edges. And by the time I got to the Planning Commission, it wasn't the best example because a lot of those mulches and that had washed away and gone into the street. And so this is kind of the presentation that was given. But one of the concerns the Planning Commission said is, how do we make sure the type of material is appropriate? How do we know people will get the right item? And as they talked about that, then they also went on to other items. How do we know it's going to be installed properly? Or there are maintenance concerns. Weeds still can grow in it. There are still other things that can take place. And you need to look at this as it's a commitment and an investment, not just a quick fix for something and then can become even more of a problem later on. The other thing the Planning Commission discussed was the impact improper treatment can do to the public infrastructure, our storm drains, and then the idea of monitoring and enforcing the regulations. As they discussed it among themselves in the public hearing, they felt that there were too many unanswered questions that they felt we couldn't really address or ensure that in the future this will be a good thing for the city. So in their recommendation to you, they voted 7-0 to deny the petition. Now, we had a work session on November 18th to discuss this, and the council directed us and legal staff to develop an ordinance that could be presented for your consideration. So the legal department and planning have been working along with Glenn from the council staff on a proposed ordinance that could come to you for consideration. That ordinance basically takes the approach of saying, let's do the amendment, and that amendment would happen in two areas. One, it would change the definition section to allow artificial turf as a material that could be used as in landscaping definition. Two, it then changed the section 13 of Title 15 to then set some of the criteria for artificial turf, being that it would need to be green, it couldn't be other colors, it needs to have the lifelike appearance and minimum height of 1.5 inches. It needs to have a weight so substantial so it doesn't blow away or create problems. It needs to be anchored properly. It needs to have solid edging. It needs to have some distances, 2 feet from shrubs, 4 feet from tree trunks. So again, just to give a break, the product needs to have a minimum warranty to it so it will last and not be a 1 year and then it's done and looks awful and still it's not any different than the brown grass area. And then that we treat it like we treat any other non-living landscape item. 10% or less, it's permitted, and nothing else has to be done. That is just allowed use. If you want to cover more of your landscape area, between 10 and 50%, then you'd need to follow the regulations that exist for all other non-living landscaped items. That is coming before the planning staff with a sketch, getting a no-fee permit to show that they understand the principles behind using the turf. Also understand that there are more things involved in designing where this goes rather than just placing something down. And once that is reviewed, then the permit is issued for the installation. Again, it's a no-fee permit. And then also there's an exemption in the proposed ordinance that sports or athletic fields would be exempt from that provision when it's used for schools, parks, or community centers. And so that, if they want to do a soccer field, whether it be the city or someone in private recreation facility, that they'd be exempt and be allowed to have the turf, AstroTurf in that. I shouldn't say AstroTurf, artificial turf as a use. So that is the ordinance that's before you for consideration. You got really two thoughts. Do you accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny the petition? Or the ordinance that's before you tonight, do you consider that and adopt it with these provisions that we've outlined?
Any questions for Mr. Montgomery?
Greg, on the no-fee permit, for those who have existing property, like some of the examples you've shown, some of them will have to do minor adjustments to bring it up to, aesthetically look nice, but do they have to apply for the no-fee permit and for those that are existing, or what's the process?
The property on Harrison that filed for the petition would have to apply for that. The property on Skyline, actually, there was and I didn't see the whole thing of how it happened, but they did have a city approval and a review on it.
Who reviewed it?
I didn't see who the staff person is, but there was a permit issued. But that was back, like, say, 8 or 9 years ago.
If I wanted to put rock all in my yard, xeriscape, or however you say that.
That's zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
Rock's not xeriscape.
Put an X, not a Z.
Rock alone, it's not xeriscape.
I have weeds and everything growing. What's the process by which you would, is it a similar process with code enforcement? Or?
It is. The general requirement in all the landscaping, whether it be living plant material or whether it be the rocks and those type of things, is that you still have to maintain it. You still have to keep it weed-free and clean. And so those same standards apply whether it's all living plant material or whether you use a combination or whether,
Is there a requirement of a 50% requirement now? So if I wanted to do all rocks, I'd be okay?
Well, what it says is that if you want to go more than 10% rocks, you have to come in to show that you've got a design theme in mind, there's some continuity of the theme. You do have areas of living plant material.
Similar kind of
trees help.
or proposed ordinance.
Right, those same type
That's
of things.
what I'm asking.
Yeah, same.
Skull and a saguaro cactus.
All right.
Yeah, the same standard would apply to that as it would to the artificial turf.
I'd like to go back to the no-fee permit. If I came in and asked or applied for that no fee, and I filled out the documents, and on that report, where does that go? Does that stay in the planning office, or does that go to code enforcement indicating that?
Well, what it does is when they come in, we have them do a sketch. We can just go over it with them. We issue the permit, then it's registered with the building services, and so it stays as an address file of a permit being issued for that work. So we have an address file when anyone comes in for a permit for whatever it is, whether it be the no-fee fence permit or the driveway permit, or they're working on the house. That's all entered in on an address file, so it's easy to retrieve. Did this get a permit or didn't get a permit?
So I imagine code enforcement's going to do the enforcement of this.
Correct.
Is that right? So they would have access to that file?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Also, review using the park strip. As that.
This provision, we do not allow the artificial turf in the park strip. One of the things we're saying is this is a private property choice, but is not something that we'll allow in the public right-of-way. And so we specify in the ordinance that it cannot be used in the public right-of-way. And there are several reasons for that. One, again, they're generally narrower spaces. It's harder to keep it down and keep the weight there because it's not the big space. The edge transitions, if it's not done right, can create problems for liability issues. When you generally do it, if you're doing the sand or the rubber pellets or that, it's easier to get in the stormwater system. So we just felt it just does not belong in the public right-of-way. This is something that can happen on private property, but not the public right-of-way. There's other ways to treat low-water designs in the public right-of-way.
Any further?
I would like to go to code enforcement again. The proposed ordinance that is before us, do you see any reason why we could not enforce that?
Well, again, you've got 3 people for, a town of our size, and so it's just being able to get to which ones are the concerns, which ones are the complaints, because it'll be complaint-driven. It wouldn't be just going around and looking at it.
Well, and you don't not issue fence permits just because we only have 3 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have people who built some really crummy looking fences too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's kind of the idea. The permit is there to help them know what to do, and if they choose not to obey it, then at least you've got this is the form you were told to do. You made a choice to go another direction.
The idea of the 8-year warranty, I think I understand that would help to dictate that this is a good product.
Quality product.
Quality product. But even, let's say after 12 years, I mean, it's going to require some subjectivity by a code enforcement officer to decide it doesn't look good anymore.
Uh-huh.
How do they arrive at that conclusion?
Well,
what standard? What?
We just use our general maintenance standard of any type of landscaping. Is it deteriorated? Is it weed infested? Those type of things become the consideration.
Well, and I think most of the newer materials last several decades, like 20, you could expect 20 years, not...
Yeah, the cheap materials won't, but if you're doing it right, you shouldn't have a problem with that. And so we're just setting a minimum standard of what the expectation would be. So that 8 years is not saying, after 8 years you got to replace it. It's just saying, have you bought a material that will last?
Right.
The other item which will govern this ordinance is the cost of doing a project like this. I imagine the cost is a little bit higher than putting in turf.
Oh yeah, if you're doing it right, there is a cost to it. This is not something that you just say, I'm going to do this to replace grass. You've got to realize there's an investment in it and make a conscious decision that that's the way you're going to go.
But there's a trade-off. I mean, if you're using culinary water to water your lawn, your turf, then that's expensive. You have the expense of lawn care if you're spraying chemicals on it and things like,
But it's kind of like a lot of things. There's a larger upfront cost that's realized over a longer lifespan to get back to balance.
And not everybody's doing it just to save money. They're doing it because they're concerned about their water consumption.
Yeah, if you're trying to save money, this is not the approach you take.
Any more questions? Thank you. Is Pamela Clark, the petitioner, here? Would you like to come and address the council?
Hello, my name's Pam Clark. I'm the Executive Director of the Family Support Center of Ogden, which owns the building at 3340 Harrison. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come and speak with you. I just want to give you a little background history on why we made the decision that we made. When we purchased the building 5 years ago, it quickly became clear that our sprinkler system at that building was very archaic, and for the next couple of years, I would open up the utility bill and try to keep myself from passing out. Apparently we had several broken lines, which we would fix, and then a couple months later I would get another water bill that was equally as appalling. And it just reached a point where it became clear that we would either need to completely redo the sprinkler system or come up with another idea. The water bill, the highest water bill we had was $1,200, and we had wasted 177,000 gallons of water. I have a pool that holds 22,000 gallons, and when I thought of what that looked like times out, it was pretty upsetting. I was born and raised in a small desert town in California where water conservation education is huge, and it was very disturbing from a water conservation standpoint as well as an economic one. A $1,200 water bill constitutes 5 months of my budget for utilities. So I knew something had to be done. So we had a company willing to donate the artificial turf. And this issue has actually gotten a lot of media attention. There's been 3 articles written. In the Standard Examiner, I was on Fox News 2.5 weeks ago, and ABC has also approached me because of the mild winter we just had, and the concern about going into a drought and looking at some ideas that cities can do around that issue. So, and I also wanted to state, one of the newspaper articles said I was asking for forgiveness rather than permission. But I do want to let you know that I did read the regulations, and then when I got the citation, I reread them again, and I called and said, I'm still not clear on where I violated any regulation. I can't see anywhere that it tells me that I can't. And I was told, but it doesn't tell you that you can. And so my concern was how difficult it was to even understand. I've read the proposal of the new regulation, and I was thrilled by how easy it was to understand. So I appreciate that. I also wanted to comment on the current condition of the artificial turf. We had started to lay it out when I received the citation. And while the artificial turf was donated, the labor to have it professionally done was not. And so I made an executive decision to stop with the construction of getting the artificial turf laid out. We do have a professional landscaping company that has laid artificial turf in other places and has said that they would be happy to finish it once this issue has been resolved. We also had an issue of, just even in the general design, I have a real concern because we're so close to Mount Ogden Junior High. My niece and nephew at junior high age came to live with me, and I just thought about some of the decisions they might make if we had rocks and things in front of our building, especially with Harrison being so close. I could just see my 13-year-old nephew being dared by somebody to throw a rock at a car, and I don't even want to think about the decision he might have made. So it came down to the ability to maintain it. A year before we laid the artificial turf, I turned the sprinklers off. And it looked pretty bad. In fact, it was complaint-driven that we did something about it. People would drive by and call me up and say, you know what, those big brown patches, it just really looks bad. You really need to do something about it. So, and then when this donation came about, the maintenance on it is relatively low, and it seemed like a good idea. So when I received the citation and was told what the problem was, that was what drove me to write the petition. I just also would like to mention that Our building is not the only property in Ogden that does not have access to secondary water. In fact, the research I found said that 54% of all the homes in Weber County do not have access to secondary water, which means we are putting culinary water on our lawns to maintain it. And doing the research on what the cost to process drinking water was, there were just a lot of reasons why it struck us as a good idea. So I apologize for the current look of the building. I would have liked to have said, look at our place. This is why it looks good, but I was told keeping it was probably not going to be very likely, so.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. We would like to receive public input on this. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address this petition, could you please come forward, give us your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm Dr. Lawton. Hang on just a second. I thought I'd pass this around since we've been talking about it for a couple of months. This is the turf I put in with perforations, and I understand this lady, I'm sorry, what's your name? Pam. Hers doesn't have perforations. And I would suggest to you all that to make them both available. There's places that both can work. And I don't think it should be the city to tell us not to do that. You got to make it work. And I commend this lady for trying to save water. And when I decided to put mine in, it was a water issue. I think we waste water. And I'll cut to the chase. We live in a desert. I looked at the snowpack today, it's 27%. And if you all think that you're not going to have water problems later, I think you're all mistaken. And if she's saving $1,200 on her bill for her business, all the power to her. I also have some pictures, a little more than the Hill Council. When you get to the guitar player,
Just give it to her.
as you can go backwards, but I heard a restriction on the height of the turf. Well, I put a putting green in my backyard, and the reason for the putting green was I have a son with muscular dystrophy, and that was one thing he could do. So that turf is not 1.5 inches, it's a putting green. And the turf next to that is a fringe. It's also not 1.5 inches, but it makes it easier for him to walk up there. I've heard a lot about heat. My front yard with rocks is a lot hotter than my turf. There hasn't been a day in the summer I can't walk on that turf. And there isn't a day in the summer when I'm listening to the lawnmowers and all the noise and I'm laying in bed that I'm not enjoying myself. And I haven't watered it since I put it in around 2005. And I do have a fax signed copy, actually right here, a copy of the approval from the city. So I don't know where you've lost that. If I have to go back and get a use permit or whatever, that's fine. But I think it should be the job of all of us, and particularly the city council, to try to help people to save the water that we don't have. Whether it's xeriscaping, AstroTurf, it doesn't make a difference. The heat isn't an issue. I've got plenty of shrubs around mine and trees. And if you can look in the pictures, you would take that up. We've done xeriscaping in the front. We've got beds around it, and it's quite attractive. I've heard issues about the drainage, and I talked to the city councilman, or I'm sorry, city planner about the drainage issues. I've never had piling up of water on our AstroTurf. I've heard about bacteria and insects. We got plenty of them. If anybody ever needs any night crawlers, you can come to my house, you pull up the turf, they're sitting there. There's lots of them. I get weeds coming through it every day, so I have to clean it. The issue of warranty is going to be difficult because you can get a warranty. It's like a roof warranty. There's no guarantee, but mine's been in since about '05. It looks just as good as the day I put it in. And the issue of upkeep, it costs about when I put it in, $14 to $16 a square foot
Thank you, Dr. Lawton. You exceeded your 3 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, it's up to the individual to maintain it, and I hope the city would help people to do that, but it'll be
Thank
their
you.
cost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come forward.
My name is Larry Roberts. I am an employee of Chainshare Sod Farm. We have had the opportunity to do some great turf work for the city of Ogden, and we appreciate that. We supplied the turf for Serge Simmons Field. We supplied the turf for the Ogden Temple. We supplied the turf for the practice field at Weber State University. We come from the side of really understanding the need for water conservation and being careful with water. We understand that most people in their landscape use close to 50 inches of water per year. 20 inches will keep a beautiful lawn, a beautiful landscape. And that's why for 5 years we have been offering our services to municipalities and water conservancy districts to conduct classes to help the residents of the communities to understand why they can why and how they conserve water. We do have substantial research considering temperatures and the problems with heat. Statistics point out that at a 95-degree temperature, lawn surfaces are about 85 degrees. Cement surfaces are 110 plus. Asphalt surfaces are 120 degrees plus. And most AstroTurf on sports fields are at 160 degrees. Turf grass has been proven to be one of the great ways to reduce the cost of heating a building. Surround it with grass, and it reduces the energy needs of the building as far as use for air conditioning and energy consumption. Some of the other things are on playing fields, the artificial dirt that's used in playing fields is mostly constructed from ground tires, and there's a body of research being done right now on the increase of cancer in soccer players because of what that is doing to them, and the particle size of these tires when they're ground is that of what asbestos was taken from the market for because the cancer causing. So we would encourage careful use in the ordinance, and I appreciate very much the work done by the Planning Commission. They've addressed several things. Remember that an 18-hole golf course can produce enough oxygen to support 7,000 people in a year. I do appreciate your time. I really appreciate the city's in-depth research on the project, and I do sympathize with those who have water issues. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no movement, we'll come back to the council for resolution. Do we have a motion?
Well, maybe.
Before we make
Questions.
a motion, I just have a question probably for Greg. Can you talk a little bit about the height requirement?
Well, the high requirement was, again, to try to look at the quality of the material to avoid the indoor-outdoor green carpet that you could get at any discount store, and trying to get to a point that does it look natural, does it have that feel? Now, again, the comment was made, if it's a putting green, that looks natural for a putting green. So, I don't know if we want to put an amendment saying if, height unless you're using it for putting and that, but normal grass is not cut that low. It's a putting green. It's lower than that height. So you've got an unusual situation being.
So I'm just wondering if there's any language suggestion to cover this sort of situation that Dr. Lawton's talking about.
Maybe you insert something that says, materials manufactured for use as synthetic turf. I mean, because that outdoor carpeting
Is not meant as
meant
turf.
to be
yeah.
synthetic turf.
Right.
Did they come in and ask for a variance on the ordinance at that time?
Well, I think if you want to cover that, we need to kind of address
To
it
make
with the
easy.
ordinance
I
itself.
think it's better to get it right instead of make
And
people
I-
have to mess with it.
Sure, and I agree with Amy in the words that she used where it's a synthetic turf. Because the turf can be the putting green, it can be the fringe, but if it aesthetically, is green and it looks, like you said, it looks like a natural situation, then I'm very much in.
Maybe the best scenario would be, because again, if you're using it more than 10%, you come in with a sketch of what you're going to do. And say, okay, well, I want a little green here, I want to do this, and that's part of my design. You could maybe have in the wording 1.5 inches unless proposed for,
Other
I'm
purposes.
trying to think of what else, lawn bowls, maybe that type of thing, unless for some sports activity in the
But
rear yard.
I guess, in his situation, it's for one of his children.
Well, a portion of it's that way, but it's designed as a little golf, a little putting green, a chipping area, a little sand trap, that type of stuff there.
Good point.
But the other point is then just a lawn area.
I mean, there is under 5D, it says the use of indoor or outdoor plastic or nylon carpeting as a substitute or replacement for artificial turf or natural turf is prohibited. So it already addresses that. You could just take out the minimum
Height.
height.
Greg, maybe just a question for you. If it were something like a putting green, could that be considered something similar to a basketball court in your backyard? I mean, not considered part of the landscaping and therefore be outside of this ordinance? If it's for a recreational
Well, I
purpose or
think with one
something?
of the comments made, we're trying to get the ordinance so everyone can understand it and find it clearly. So I'm just trying to think of a better
Somebody
way to do
looking
that.
to do that with artificial turf would tend to look at what we have pertaining to artificial turf.
Right.
And they may not think that it's like a patio or basketball court or
Yeah, 'cause
something.
that's a whole different chapter and
Yeah.
somewhere else, so.
So if we just delete the minimum height and put in that it's a natural looking turf that,
Manufactured for use as
For that purpose.
artificial use.
and that, and we leave it up to the person who's doing that in the planning commission or planning staff to look at it and say, yes, this meets that need.
Because it already explicitly says you can't
Right.
use.
I think Gary wants to say something.
I think it would be well if we.
What I was going to say is that if you choose to accommodate this use that isn't anticipated in the current draft, then I suggest you not change it on the fly. I suggest that you either adopt it now and amend it later, or don't adopt it now and send it back to be redrafted for you. Because otherwise, you're going to have unanticipated consequences. You're going to be amended anyway, and so why not just do it right?
And along with that, I would recommend you keep in mind that we want code enforcement to be able to
weigh in?
To weigh in, and if you make it too arbitrary, then I think they have a hard time with enforcement. So enforcement needs to be considered, I think, if you're going to rewrite it.
I think Gary's recommendation is that we can amend this if we select to do so. We'd have to do another study and look at the options that would be placed before us. But surely amendment could be designed at a later date.
Greg, one other question that came up was the type of backing, the perforation. And, currently, the way we've written our ordinance, does it not allow for that perforated type of turf?
No, it requires a perforated.
Okay.
It requires a perforation to let the water go down to the soil. And from my understanding, the product that is used for the property on Harrison also has perforations in it, so they would comply that way. It's not.
It may not just be big holes, it's more of a permeable.
It's just porous.
Does it come that way, or is that something that?
No, it's something that you buy it that way.
Okay, you don't, so the landowner would not have to do that?
No, that's what you'd
okay.
be buying it that way.
Stabbing it.
Like, yeah.
Everyone wears golf spikes and just walks on down there.
I guess my concern with this is, this petition is from back in September,
Because she was issued a citation. So what happens if we don't move forward?
Well,
Commissioner.
the citation's on hold because the petition was filed. Until you act on it, it's on hold.
Is this something we could table to a date certain? I mean, that would be my recommendation. Let's get it right and have a deadline. And do you have a date certain for us?
We would suggest May 12th, which is 2 weeks out.
I think that's
okay.
very timely.
So that would be my recommendation, that we table this with a date certain of May 12th.
With the
recommended
adjustment.
To address that adjustment. Okay.
Okay. So just to make sure that we have all those adjustments that need to be made, let's make a laundry list. So that he doesn't have to remember. Pardon?
I think it's just one adjustment.
Well,
to the height.
Just to the height, was that the
Well,
only
what
thing?
we would look at is how do we balance height versus maybe some of the other purposes you may want that artificial turf for, and to allow those flexibility.
Versus code enforcement.
Right.
Okay.
I think we need to take into consideration also the enforcement of the ordinance.
Right.
How practical that's going to be.
Well, certainly any language changes would be run by code enforcement for their input. Is that right?
Right, before we bring it to you,
Okay.
Here's what is proposed. Do you guys have concerns?
Okay.
Is that sufficient time to make the
yes.
change?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Do we need a motion to do that?
We need a motion to table and a second and a vote.
I made a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Vice Chair White to table this item to May 12th. And I think this is just a voice vote, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Guess,
The petition was from August.
yeah, it's been a long time.
That's,
Okay, next item on our agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name and address clearly for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no movement, comments from our administrative staff
Nothing tonight, thank you.
and council members. No comments. Okay, the next item after that is our closed executive session, and Mr. Williams, would you like to comment about that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the close is permissible for the purposes set forth on the agenda.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn into a closed executive session.
I'll make a motion. We move into a closed executive session.
I have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks to move into a closed executive session. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That's unanimous. We will return to this room to adjourn from the council meeting, and following that, there will be a special redevelopment agency meeting, which will be followed by a city council work session, and the reasons for those are on the agendas.
So those of you who are here, just hold on for a
Hey,
minute.
just hang
We'll be
on.
back.
Well, welcome back. We are here to reconvene our April 28th, 2015 Ogden City Council meeting. And all council members are present still, and we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will have a RDA meeting immediately following this meeting, followed by a work session, and those items will be on the agenda.